Hello and welcome to this year's Irish Grassland Association beef event for 2021. We're delighted to bring you this virtual online event again this year, and we'll be featuring two very unique and interesting farmers over the course of the next hour. John Kingham from County Louth will be showing us his very interesting suckler system, and then we will be moving to County Kildare, where Alan Callaghy will be showing us his weanling to finishing system. We're also delighted to be joined by Rory Mannion of Bord Bia, who will be talking to us about the grass-fed standard and what that might mean for farmers in the future. I want to thank the work of Niall Claffey and all of his subcommittee who were involved in the organising of this event, who have done sterling work to pull everything together and organise all of the content you are about to see. I also want to thank the work of the wider Grassland Council for their ongoing commitment and work to all of the activities of the association over the year. And finally to Maura Callery, who works tirelessly in the back office to make sure all of the events and activities of the Irish Grassland Association run smoothly. Finally, I want to thank the support of our sponsor, Mullinahone Co-op, who have once again come on board to support our beef event again in 2021, and we really appreciate their support. I hand you now to James Manley of Mullinahone Co-op, who will say a few words before we proceed with the main event. I hope you enjoy the event. I hope there's lots of good information, and I hope you all pick up some tips to implement on your farm at home. Thank you and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Stan. It is a real pleasure for Mullinahone Eurotags to be supporting the Irish Grassland Association Beef Event 2021. The Irish beef and farming sectors are an important part of our animal identification business at Mullinahone Eurotags. As Ireland's largest seller of official ID tags, we believe the cornerstone of any sector in agriculture starts with its traceability, and this is why we offer our customers the full range of Allflex animal identification products, both official electronic EID and visual tags for both cattle and sheep, and we also offer a full range of genomic DNA tissue sampling tags. As technology is becoming more and more a part of everyday farming, Mullinahone is leading the way by offering the full range of Allflex AgriDent electronic stick and handheld readers for use with EID tags, which helps reduce labour costs on farm with its ability to accurately and quickly collect and store key data to aid with the weighing, treatments and movement of animals. We would like to wish every success to the Irish Grassland Association with their Beef Event 2021. And we are very interested in hearing from some very keynote speakers from the event. At Mullinahone Eurotags, we are here to work with you.
Good evening. You're very welcome to the Irish Grassland Association Virtual Beef Event 2021. We have an action-packed showcase for you this evening, visiting two very different farms. One is a large-scale suckler to weaning operation in the east of the country, and the other is a weanling to beef enterprise located on the Kildare-Meath border. Later, we will find out a little bit more about the new standard for Irish grass-fed beef and its potential for Irish farmers. But first, I travelled to County Louth to the Rathmore to Tetra farm to meet farm manager John Kingham. So John, many thanks for allowing the Irish Grassland Association to hold part of the virtual beef event on the Rathmore to Tetra farms this year. I suppose, John, just to start off, can you give us a bit of a background, a bit of an introduction or a bit of a history to the farm here?
The Tetra and Rathmore farms here is based in Dundalk, County Louth. We roughly have around 1,000 acres there to work with. We have over 1,000 head of cattle on farm at the minute. There's myself and 3 staff along with a bit of part-time students. We run roughly around 500 suckler cows with follow-on replacements and like calves. Our sales, we normally try and get all sold off before yearlings. Currently we have our heifer sale every October. So we do. So now we'll have our first online bull sale now coming up shortly. So that's the way we're moving forward now.
And John, was it always suckler to weaning here before you took over in 2018?
Yeah, it was suckler to beef. They were fattened all like cattle here before I took over, but I just wanted to bring my own brand and different stuff to it, and I thought the way the farm was going back 3 years ago, I still thought the high quality end replacement heifer was still there, and I still do believe that there is definitely a place for suckler farming. Like, it's taken off this last 3 years, so it has, and I think there is a future in it. I think there's a good future in it.
And obviously with 500 cows You know, that obviously takes a lot of labour. How many people work here on the farm?
There's myself and 3 lads, and then we'd have college lads in and out, helping out at certain times of the year. Whenever they're free in college, they'd come in here. Cahill would come in here at weekends to give us a hand at the weekends and different stuff. Gives the other lads time off and that sort of way. Then you'd have other colleges there, like maybe there's a young lad there from Dublin. He's the young Tony. He's in twice a week here, just to get himself sorted out for it, and it's all going well.
And I suppose, John, before we kind of get into the bones or the mechanics of the system, you mentioned it there, but what was the thought process, I suppose, behind going down this route? Was dairy farming ever considered, or was it always going to be suckler farming for you?
Suckling, I loved suckling farming. I like coming out in the morning and seeing that quality calf being born. Yes, dairy farming's going well, but it's not for everybody. So it wasn't for me when I was taking over the role here, so that's why I went with the top end commercial cattle.
You have 500 cows, John, as you can see behind you, a mix of different breeds. What's the genetics, I suppose, of the herd?
The reason why we went for the different mix of breeds was if I had went for a certain breed, I wouldn't bring in all the customers I would have. I decided that I'd bring in all the different breeds that's in Ireland at the minute. So I did. So we brought in from Shorehorns to Limousin Semmetals, Belgian Blues. And the way I look at it is, whoever, doesn't matter who comes to the farm to visit or have a look on, there's something there for everybody. That's why we went with the different genetics of all different breeds.
So I suppose, John, that brings us on to the breeding season. Obviously, it's a spring and autumn calving system. I suppose, what's the breeding policy? Are you using AI? Are you using stock bulls? Or I suppose, to bring us through that process.
We have probably we've AI'd most of our replacement heifers. There's about 60 or 70% in calf EBY, and the rest all followed up with bulls. This year, I didn't AI my suckler cows this year because I had spent a lot of money in stock bulls that we bought, so we're trying to tighten that calving pattern up. But at the minute, I would say we have about 85% of the herd back in calf already.
Are you holding on to any of your own stock as replacement heifers, or are all breeding stock sold off the farm?
We have a first batch of our own replacement heifers that you'll see now as we go around the farm. There's 54 or 5 at the minute, and then we've retained another 34 of our replacements from last year. So we're going to try and keep 50 every year of our own, as long as going around different farms and maybe picking out the best heifers at different sales and different stuff like that there to try and keep everything. You know, we like to give a wee bit back to get a bit, you know, so way. So them cattle will come in, they'll be segregated here, then they join into our vaccinating program, which takes them probably 5 or 6 weeks to get into ours. With him, you start doing the first vaccine to bring them through, but they'd all have to be brought on to the scale here before they'll be let into the main herd, so they would.
So, John, look, we've come down here to a batch of your replacement heifers this year. I suppose just give us a little bit of a background on this batch.
These are some of the heifers I kept on from the first batch of cows that had come through. We've AI'd them to EBY, which we got a 65, around that percent hit. I used a Simpa stock bull here to pick up the last few that didn't hold. So we have them more or less all scanned now back in calf. So they'll all be due now. The AI ones will be due in the first week of October, with the remainder then at the end of October. So there will be.
And these were synchronised, John. Do you want to just talk us through that?
Yeah, we use a synchronised program using the CEDAR. I find it very, very good for when you're working on the numbers we're working here. It's very hard to catch them one by one. So when you do them in a batch, you're AI in that batch, and then you're hoping. So like we got 60% on that day, which is very, very good. So I'm more or less happy with the way the AI system's going. And
the majority of these are homebred stock. Is there any purchased in stock here, John?
Yeah, there's 48 heifers in this batch here at the minute. There's about 5 in it. The 5 or 6 was purchased in it. A few come out of James Alexander's. One come out of Trisha Kennedy's from Galway. They're a lovely batch of heifers. And as you can see here by the video, they're very, very quiet. They're not running about a lot. The temperament's very good. So man says you can really bring them home with you.
And I suppose, John, when you're looking to breed from a heifer or breed from what characteristics are you looking for?
Oh, you'd be looking for a good temperament heifer. A heifer that has good feet, milkability, quietness. Like, there's a lot of stuff there. Colour's a big thing now at the minute. So roan cattle at the minute now is massive. I will be trying to push that market a wee bit, like, you know, because it is a higher paid animal, but it's impossible to breed that type of animal. So you can't breed them, like. It's luck. It is luck.
Okay, and John, you're running a spring and autumn calving system. Do you operate a strict culling policy, or do you let animals drift?
No, if cows are not going in calf, they're gone. Like they're not going in calf for a reason. I'd say over the next 3 to 4 years, with the way I'm planning, is the spring calving will be daying off, and I'll probably go try and get 80% calving in autumn, and have only 20% calving in spring.
Okay. And why will you go for that?
I find that it's down to everybody's facilities too. For here, I'm fit to handle it. At the minute, I'm not just fit to handle it, but I do think you get more out of your grass, less meal. Your calf's a bit stronger going out. You can take the weather elements and different stuff like that there. So that'd be the reason I'd be pushing that.
John, just then on the stock bulls, I suppose, what breeds of stock bulls are you using, and how are you deciding, I suppose, what bull is going with what animal?
Thankfully, all the bulls I've bought so far, I bought a lot of them here in Ireland and Northern Ireland. Bought 1 or 2 of them across the water in England and Scotland, and I bought a few bulls in Belgium as well. And thankfully now all the bulls I've bought are doing very well. The type of cows I have here, every last one of my cows, maybe bar 1 or 2, mightn't be blessed with milk, but the majority of them are all great milkers. And thankfully any bull I've crossed with any of my cows have all given me great calves. Like when you can produce 150 heifers at any sale and turn them into 1350 of an average, I think it proves me bulls are doing all right. Like they're good bulls. Like.
That brings us on to maybe the calving season. It's obviously a very busy time here in the spring and in the autumn. How are you managing that workload?
Funny enough, the calving season went very well. Actually, every man got a sleep and having the cows calved down all right. There is the odd night you would have got caught, but in general it went well. It went very well.
And the facilities here, how are cows managed, I suppose, in the period pre-calving? Are they on straw bedded sheds or?
Yeah, once we know the autumn calves will all come down here, they'll go up onto a peat bed. They're fed a diet of 1.5 kilos of pre-calver nuts. They get silage and straw mixed, and it's working well now. It is working well, that diet.
And how long was the calving interval?
We started on the 2nd of October for the autumn calf. We finished around the end of November, and then we had a month off. We started very sharp we had over 100 and something cows calved in January, and the same again in February. So we're just down now. I know we're heading into May. There's always the stragglers. Doesn't matter what way you work. If I used to cull all the stragglers now, I'll still have the same stragglers next year, because just with the amount of cows I have, bulls do get hurt and different stuff. Maybe knocks them off. If there's too much heat, if the sun's too baking, the bull's fertility goes down himself. So it's trying to balance the act. It's not simple. Like every farm, you do have your ups and downs, but we are down to, I think we have 8 left to calve there now, so I'm looking forward to getting them out of the way.
Look, I suppose you mentioned that it was a suckler to the beef farm. What way was the grassland management or the grazing infrastructure on the farm before you took over?
When I took over, there wasn't really much cattle allowed to graze, everything and all that sort of way. But when I took over, I decided to put them all into paddock systems, tighten everything up, and it's worked very well. Like we're getting good efficiency out of the grass at the minute. But if we have a heat wave, we're burning up. If we have rain, we will grow great grass. But you don't want a heat wave. Probably with 70% of the farm now probably reseeded. You can see it. Reseeding's key. Yes, it does cost a wee bit when you're doing it, but it's the ground that's keeping us going this spring. It's keeping us flying this spring. The regrowth's very good with it. Very, very good.
And when it comes to grazing, I suppose, how are you managing the cattle numbers? Are you grazing in large groups?
We probably put all cows go in their 30s. All depends on what's going on. And we keep all bull calves to one paddock and all the heifers in their 30s. So that's the way we work it.
And is there much labour involved with the large groups of cattle, or is it?
Oh, no. We have myself and 2 other men check all the cattle in the morning, and we should have all cattle checked within an hour and a half at the most.
So John, look, you mentioned there that you kind of done an overhaul of the grazing infrastructure on it. What sort of size, I suppose, paddocks are you running?
We try to give them about an acre and a half, maybe 2 acres. There is some paddocks might be 3 or 4 acres. What we try and do here is whenever a 30 batch of cows go in, you try and get 3 days per paddock. Then we have a rotation of 21 days. And
since switching to that paddock system, have you seen many benefits in the
Yeah, oh yeah. tightens everything up. You get more grass, you get more benefits, more better thrive. You know, cattle are not walking all over the place. When you go to see them in the morning, they're there on their batch. They're only in a 2-acre paddock, so you can walk around 2 acres there in 5 minutes. You can see all you want. It gives you a better chance of getting seeing all the cattle before tea time in the morning.
And obviously, John, with so many numbers here on the farm, animal health has to play an important role.
There's a very good vaccination programme there in place. Works very well here. Everything's vaccinated for everything. The animal health, it's the bread and butter. If you heard, if your animal's not well, you're not going to get paid. So, you know, you need a healthy animal to be sold on.
And John, if I was to ask you maybe 3 things or 3 principles that you kind of hone in on to make the whole operation think, what would those 3 things be?
Well, first things first, like you need a heart and a drive to want this job. Like, you know, if you don't have them 2 things, you're never going to go nowhere in life. Never nowhere in life. If you think you're going to get up tomorrow morning and this is all going to happen for you, you may think twice. If you have the drive and you have the want to do something in life, you'll make it work. That's why I made this work, because I believed in it. And thankfully it has got over the line. My sales is going very well. And then when you have repeat customers coming back, that gives you the bit of satisfaction that what you've done is right. When you see men ringing you to say, oh, any chance to come up and visit, I want to see what you're having for your next sale. Like my next sale is not till October, and I've already people looking come in now already to visit, which I'm proud to say that it's nice to see that, like, you know. The second thing then would be you need a good team with you as well. As I always saying, a man can only bring a football team so far, but if you have 15 good lads running with you, you'll make it work. Thankfully the team I have here now are very good lads. Like. Every man puts a shoulder to the wheel and we get the job done, and I'm happy with that. And probably thirdly then with the facilities, to have a 500 cow herd, you need facilities, and you don't want men being killed either or stressed to the last. At least if you have a facility that works, it's very easy to come in and do your job. And thankfully with the facilities we have here now is working very well since we revamped the whole place, so it's going well, going very well.
And in terms of when it comes to, you know, maybe machinery work on the farm, John, is that all done in-house or is it contracted out?
Well, we do all our own slurry and all that sort of stuff, but contracting all out for silage and all that sort of stuff. My main priority is the cattle. If you're starting to dip your hands and everything, something goes wrong. So you have to give yourself 100% to one thing, and then let the men that does all the other work, let them come in and do it.
And you mentioned that one of the things that makes the system tick is the facilities. I suppose just give us a run through maybe of the facilities that are on the farm, John.
We can calve down any one time. We can calve 100 cows in the one day. So we have the facilities to maintain that like, in any one day. Like. So if you have 15 or 16 calves in a day, it leaves everything a lot handier. Like. We put up a new facility for the Dawson, new weigh bridge put in for weighing our cattle and everything there. We put up a wee crush there for dehorning, and try and leave everything a lot easier for men, because you know yourself, calves and cattle, you don't want no one getting hurt. Safety's a big thing with me as well. Like. You don't want no man hurt, because at the end of the day, every man has a family, they want to go home to their kids and all that sort of stuff. So every little bit helps to try and keep everybody safe.
And I suppose, John, look, it's been a busy, I suppose, 2 or 3 years since you came on board, and you've made great progress. I suppose, what's the plan now? You're nearly at the 500 cow mark. Like, what's the plan? Where do you want to be in 5-10 years?
The plan would be is to keep the quality very high, try and something different. There's different things happening on farm as we speak at the minute that will bring a different breed and different lanes. Them calves probably will not come on lane till next year or the year after. We're doing a bit of AVF here as well, and a bit of flushing as well. We're doing all that sort of stuff to try and get the higher end spec of our cattle, more of them calves out there. So that is the plan forward, to keep the quality high. There is other things in the background which I'd love to push forward with, but it's just in the pipeline at the minute, so we'll see what happens.
So look, John, from everyone in the Irish Grassland Association, many thanks for today.
Thanks very much, and thanks very much for having us.
So many thanks to John for an insight and an overview of the large-scale operation. But now we're heading to County Kildare, where Christy Watson caught up with beef farmer Alan Callaghy.
Okay, Alan, many thanks for allowing the Irish Grassland Association onto your farm for this virtual open day. And maybe you might give us an outline of the farm, the system, maybe the history of the farm.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're so very welcome here to my valley. We're on the border between Meath and Kildare. The fence over there is divides between Meath and Kildare. The farm is a fragmented farm. I've 3 different divisions. Here where we are now is an out farm. It's 50 acres here. At home, the home block is where the shed and my house is and all that. And then I have another block of land up 2 miles away. It leaves it very more difficult to manage when you have, compared to having all the land together. But we work with it, and we work with it and that. Its soil type would vary between light and heavy. You have sandy loam, you have heavy clay, and then you'd have black soil as well. So we've different soils to work with, but we work with it. It's ideal for dry stock once you manage it right, because different times it can be an advantage with a soil type that retains moisture, and then it can be an advantage to having the dry land as well. So you just work with what you've got and get the best resources of what you got.
So Alan, you mentioned that it's a beef farm. What beef system do you run on the farm?
I buy weanings in October, and I keep buying them till about mid-November, and I keep them for about till they're beef. And I have them in the shed for 3 days after bringing them in. I insist that they come from the mart as soon as they're bought and as soon as I can get them home. And they go into a straw bedded shed then for about 3 days. And I just sprinkle a few nuts so that they walk in and they get used to the nuts in the shed that night. And the clean water, a big bed of straw. And the next day then I have to handle them very gently because they're nervous and that. And I go in and just get them used to me with a few nuts in the trucks then. Then I let them out after 3 days out into a sheltered paddock, which is well fenced then. And the same story, I walk through them, I get them used to me. And once I get them used to me and settled down, after 3 days out in that sheltered paddock, to go on down further. It's important that they're never, a batch comes in and goes on and stays in that batch for about 2 or 3 weeks, so that no mixing of, roughly I buy a batch every week, 15 to 20 weanings, and I just keep them separated for that length of time, with an awful lot of vigilance then watching them. And then once you get over 3 weeks then, and as they're coming in batches then, after about a month you can start putting them together, because they're over the vital period of, they're very vulnerable. They're after coming off a cow, the stress of going to a mart. That's why we have to minimise the amount of stress to have when they come into my farm. And then the big thing about that system then is they get so used to you then that you can do what you like for the length of time you have them to their beef. You can, very easy to manage then, you know.
And it obviously works because your health your health status is very high in that first a couple of months there. So the protocol you've set up is working very, very well. Just to go back to the beef system, how many weanings do you buy, Alan?
About 120 weanings.
120. And are they, what's the finishing system then? Are they all finished off grass or finished out of the sheds? What's the split
half
there?
and half. And I'm trying to produce more of them off grass than in the shed, because it's costing more in the shed. And that's the way the paddock system and the improvement in the quality of grass will help me. It'll mean that I'll have more grass for them outside, more quality grass for them. I want to minimise the amount of time and expense of being in the shed, so I want to get...
And is that the beef system you've always operated, Alan, buying weanings? Is that that's...
Well, it's going back about 10 years, yeah.
Okay, and prior to that, what did you do?
Before that, it was well, I went back a long time. I was on calf to beef, and then I used to buy store cattle then in between, but then I got into this system of weaning to beef, yeah. Yeah, and then you have you've the weanling coming in at about 300 kgs, and he's just coming off the cow at that stage, and he's only the one movement. It's not like years ago where there used to be dealers in mart. Every weanling that comes in now comes directly from the farm to the mart, and then he's, as quick as he can, he's on my farm, and I'm looking after him from there on. That's vitally important. No matter how much you do with him, it's just to look after him.
That transition onto your farm.
That transition period,
right.
yeah.
And Alan, just do you go to the marts and buy your own stock, or how do you source it?
I have an agent a local agent that's been doing it all, buying my cattle for me all my life. He's a great lad. He's able to judge cattle very well, and he comes in and picks them for the factory, and he does everything for me. But he's a great eye for. Wouldn't be too bad myself, but I leave it to him. It takes the responsibility away then. My whole focus then is looking after the weanlings. I don't have to worry about getting them home from a mart. He does that for me. Yeah.
And what sort of carcass weights do you bring the beef to?
About 410 kilos carcass weight. And then maybe later on grass, them continentals can go a bit heavier then later on, because they have a maturity date to fatten, and then the more growthy ones then might go on to 420, 430 kilos, which would be the weights, yeah.
And over the last number of years, you've obviously been involved in the Grass 10 course. Over the last number of years, you've made significant changes on the farm in relation to the way you manage grass. Could you outline maybe where you started, or where was the starting point, Alan, maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
Well, about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, I started by just maybe putting the cattle. It used to be a set stocking system I had, where you put 20 cattle here, 20 cattle there, 20. And then I started putting maybe bigger groups together and using the fields, grazing them out, grazing out a field and then just moving them on. But then in the last 3 years, 2 years, last year I started putting in paddocks and splitting the fields into, I wouldn't have big fields in places, and I just split the field, and then you had 2 paddocks, say, and so I got into, now that I have about 42 paddocks around the farm, going from 13 divisions up to 42, and it has left it be a much better quality all the time, because you're grazing it out. Your cattle are thriving much better, because nearly at every stage they have quality grass. Going back to the set stocking time, and you put them out and they've great grass. The next thing, they've too much grass. Next thing, you're going in topping it, you're wasting it. You end up with no quality grass maybe anywhere. Now I have quality grass everywhere, with the result that my cattle are finishing about a month earlier, and that's only in the last year I've noticed this happening, and that's why it's a direct result of what I did last year. And the big thing about it is to try and minimise the cost of setting up the paddock system, because with the way it is with beef farming, you're trying to work on a budget and you work with what you have. Okay, I did put a main fencing line down along my farm at home, and I tapped into all that. And down here where we are now, it's an isolated farm, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I considered getting ESB down here, but that was costing too much, and then you had a cost every year of that, even though you weren't using it that much. So I ended up buying a solar pump, and a solar pump unit which takes the water out of the river, and I put in drinkers to facilitate the solar. That I had drinkers all around. Well, I only put in 3, but I can tap into them, big 200-gallon drinkers, and I can then divide up as I want it. Then I put a mains line down along the centre of this farm, which is powered by the battery and the solar pump. There's a backup battery in the unit, and then the solar pump, and it electrifies the whole farm with the electrification I did along the main access of the farm, and then I can tap into all that then. I did two things. I got the cattle out of the river with fencing off the river, and I was able to, for management purposes then, I was able to tap into the electric wire for management purposes.
So it just shows the difficulty of operating a fragmented farm. You have two different systems really to try and set
well,
up.
This was the answer to everything what I did here, and I've been working that for 3 years now, and I've had no problems with it, minor issues, but I just ring up the chap I bought and he sorts it out. But
so that solar ran system will power your water pump and powers your electrified fences.
exactly,
Okay.
and it's a powerful whack out of the electric fencer as well. So
And that unit, how big an area does that cover? This is on the out farm where we are now.
it covers 50 acres here,
Okay.
and roughly the fencing then for here cost about 20 euros an acre, and then separate to the solar pump costs about 2,300. The solar pump unit.
So it revolutionised the way you manage grass on the out farm.
It just solved. It was fantastic now.
And Alan, the position with soil fertility, I suppose you were looking at that over the years. What sort of?
When we started, first I decided to look at the soil fertility, and we did a analysis and a test on all the land, and we seen our P's and K's, which is the case in a lot of farms, dry stock farms in the country. So I said we'll have to sort this out, and we worked with that where it wanted P's and K's, and lime we're continuously working on that, and we're building it up, which even old pastures, which some of my pastures were never reseeded, the older pastures. The most recently reseeded pastures are about 25 years old. So we worked with what we had, and it's amazing what you can do with old pastures if you get the P's and K's right.
And you're grazing, you're tight grazing and resting the ryegrass.
Yeah,
you can see the ryegrass coming back.
Yeah, with the strip grazing, then you're stripping it down, cutting, and then the quality grasses are all coming through then, you know, and then you've very little use of your topper as well. I used to so it means that every blade of grass you're growing, you're using.
So you don't no need for the putting on the topper at all, Alan. No, that's left back in the shed.
It's above
there.
in the shed now, but anyway, I have it there. But maybe an odd time you have a few thistles or something to top.
And just to go back on the cost, like it's not a big investment. 20 euro an acre for your stakes wire.
Yeah, well,
and
most
water
farms would have existing facilities there, so you have to use whatever resources you have there, and like most farmers would be able to put up the fencing themselves. In areas now I put the contract fencing, which are much more expensive, along the river and all that, but I thought that was a good investment. But you could have the costs on posts and wire by doing it yourself and using maybe not as heavy a posts, and there's ways around everything, you know.
And when your silage is cut, then when you go to graze that, you put temporary divisions in there, Alan. Then
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And that's another thing about the last couple of years, improving the silage quality by cutting at the right time, having it ready to cut, and then the last couple of years my silage has been 74% DMD, and it has cut down on the amount of meal that I use. So I pull the meal off the weanlings in February and have them ready to go out in March. But that's a great, the minute you put the meal out, the cost gone. And the same with any forward store cattle you have in the shed, cut them off in February, because the weanlings would be only coming in December, early December, and they're going out in March. So that you're minimising, and I hope to improve on that even in the future, the amount of period they're inside. And the same with the forward store cattle, get them out maybe in end of February if you can, on good grass. And the same story, you couldn't believe there in January we looked at them inside on the 74, said these lads are shining, we don't need any meal here. Cut it out, because you're gaining on, I think, 0.6 of a kilo without any meal. And that's what we want to do. We want to get more weight on the cattle with grass.
And Ali, you mentioned, I think to me there, that you were looking at how much meal you've reduced indoors with the better quality silage.
This year and last year, I looked at the meal bill for January to the last meal I bought last year and this year, and I reduced it by 40%.
Okay, so from January to turnout, a drop of 40% in meal usage, yeah, phenomenal. And going back to your paddocks, Alan, you've about you said there was about 60 hectares on the farm. So your paddock sizes are around what, a hectare?
A hectare, yeah. An odd one would be just working with a field, might be a bit bigger, but anyway.
And how long do you get out of each paddock? Well, first of all, the groups. You said earlier on that you went from set stocking to larger groups. You had lots of smaller groups. Now we have larger groups.
Yeah, well, if you, down the home farm, which we're going back to now, I would have 53 600 kg bullocks. They're the fattening ones at the moment in that particular group. I'd say that's enough of them big lads to have together. And then you'd have, well, depending on the weather and everything, you group the weanlings in bigger groups if the weather improved, but you'd still have 50 together, or roughly that, you know.
Much easier to make decisions with regard to what paddock to graze when you have less groups, smaller groups, you have less decisions to make.
Yeah, and they get used to you too, management of them for, well, of course, when they want to get out to the next paddock, they let you know. Yeah. But the other thing is, over the lifetime that you have them on the farm, just give them a shout to bring them in or do anything, you know.
Yeah,
to
they're used to it.
Yeah.
And going back to, we'll say, the paddocks, Alan, is there much extra work? Do you find you have extra work? Is there extra labour involved when you're, running this grazing system with paddocks?
No, not really. It's just be around just to open the electric fences, and no, it leaves them. You have a bigger group together, and it's easier to see them and all that type of thing than going around different groups and that. You know, I know everything's pointing to positive about it, you know.
Okay, and so the dividends you see from the extra management and the paddocks, your better quality grass, your cattle are finishing up to a month earlier, so you're capturing maybe especially when you're killing off grass, a higher price there. You're not waiting on late in the year.
The sooner the younger you can sell them, it's costing you less, and you're getting usually, for my system, the higher prices early in the season. So the sooner you have them gone, the better, you know. And that's happening with the month, killing them a month earlier, and hopefully it's an ongoing process that you can keep improving on that, you know. And it's the same with the cattle that you be fattening in the shed. Even though you might be reducing the number, it's costing a lot less. You say 100 days, finish them at say 4 or 5 kilos, and that's it. It's not a big cost, even the ones you want to, because you have that 74% DMD silage, you know.
And the other dividend in relation to, you know, getting better utilisation of the grass, you were able to drop some rented land and actually you're planning to increase cattle numbers.
Maybe dropping all rented land because I don't need it. I even dropped 20 acres, 22 acres of rented land. I didn't make it. I said, and I've surplus silage, I've surplus fodder and all that. Even, you know.
So there's a big dividend there. 20 acres rent. Less rent acre to pay.
For the last couple of years.
Yeah, better, shorter winter housing period. Cattle are finishing a month earlier at grass, and your ryegrasses are increasing. And again, you said all with old pasture.
With old pasture.
When was the last reseeding done here?
25 to 30 years ago, which would have been out there. Yeah.
Okay, so it's excellent performance. You know, that you can see a real big dividend there.
Often say, oh well, can I? Well, you'd have a few years ago. You had people here. And we're saying, just put it to them, should you reseed that? No way, that's fantastic pasture, you know, because you're losing a lot by ploughing up land, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, and then the cost and all that.
Yeah, but there must be a great sense of satisfaction that you're putting so much grass through the cattle. It's all homegrown feed. Yeah. You're getting better performance. There must be a great buzz about running a beef system that way.
Well, the main thing is you get excited now, even at this stage now, bringing the cattle into the second round there, and even though it was a bad growing season, you know that you have enough grass for them there, and it's quality grass they're going into. You'd be getting the maximum amount of gain on them cattle now at this stage, you know.
I suppose the other advantage of the paddocks, when you make a decision, we'll say in the past, if you had 13 divisions, you make a decision, it's a relatively big decision, but when you're making a decision to graze or not graze one of 40 paddocks, whether you get it right or wrong, it's not huge. You know, it gives you the confidence to make a decision, and because it's a small decision.
And then I didn't mention, but my son is he's working away from the farm, but he's got an interest in doing all the mapping for the paddocks. Only for him now, he did all that, and I have it on paper here. And he's in contact with me. It's as if he's on the farm. He's every other day. Did you move them yet? How many days did you get out of it and everything? And even we worked out the number of days we had ahead there last week and that type of thing. But he was instrumental too with the maps brain he had to work, and he mapped every paddock there about 1.5 years ago. Yeah.
So this thing is going to last. You have the next generation already on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. It reduces the whole workload. It gives you confidence to have somebody to work along with you there.
So much interest in the farm up to that, but when he loves that end of it, the working out things and maths and all that type of thing. And that's one thing I don't like, but wouldn't be bad at working out things in my head. But
well, I mean, when you can see the performance of the stock there, you're running a good show, you know. Thanks, Alan. That's been a very comprehensive rundown of the history of the farm, how you run it there at the moment. But looking to the future, where do you see the farm moving to in the future? You've obviously made great inroads the last 5 or 6 years with AJ and your son on board now. Where do you see the farm moving to, or where do you see the future for the next couple of years?
Taking advantage of the quality of the grass, improving the soil fertility, cutting down on the costs on fertiliser by just improvement in the management of the grass and all that type of thing, and using your resources which you have, which you've slurry out the shed and all that type of thing to its best advantage. And the big thing about it is I could have increased numbers this year, but I was qualified for the beam scheme, a lot of money there to be lost if I did. So I didn't increase numbers. So I'd be increasing numbers because I can carry a lot more cattle on the farm with the existing, because I'm making surplus silage and all that I don't need, you know.
So the end result is you're keeping more cattle on less land with less inputs, and they're sold up to a month earlier. So there's a fantastic result there, and you're putting a lot of grass through the stock. I think 99% of your cattle qualify for the grass-fed Irish beef standard, which is a great achievement, and you're killing you're killing continental cattle off grass with no meals. And getting very, very good grades. So it's a fantastic achievement, and it leads us in nicely to the next talk from Rory Mannion from Borbia, who's going to outline the grass-fed Irish beef standard. So thanks a million, Alan, for opening the farm to us. Compliment you on the excellent performance on the farm and the great changes you've made for the last couple of years. And on behalf of the Irish Grassland and our viewers, I'd like to wish you all the best for the future. And thank you, Alan.
Yes, so some great progress been made on Alan's farms there. Now to find out that little bit more about the new standard for grass-fed Irish beef, Christy Watson spoke to Borbia's Rory Mannion.
So earlier we spoke to Alan Callaghan, and Alan showed us and outlined the benefits of improved grassland management on his farm, the impact it has on his livestock production and also on the cost of production on his farm. So we now want to have a look at maybe the impact in beef production of Irish grass-fed beef in the marketplace, and to see is there any positives or anywhere we can exploit the good story of grass-fed beef in the marketplace. So we're joined by Rory Mannion from Borbia, and Rory, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us. And in relation to the grass-fed Irish beef standard, what is the grass-fed Irish beef standard?
So the Borbia grass-fed beef standard is a processor level standard which uses data that is collected during the Borbia farm audits and uses that data together with the animal movement data to determine whether or not an animal is eligible to qualify as grass-fed under our standard, which has 6 main rules. But the 2 key rules within those 6 are that the animal must have a grass-fed diet of at least 90%. and secondly that they must have access to pasture for at least 220 days throughout the year, and there's a 40-day leniency on that for wet years and different farm types. So the standard is also accredited by the National Accreditation Board, which gives us a huge amount more credibility, I suppose, in our grass-fed claims, especially in comparison with other programmes out there on the market.
And the good news is on Alan's farm and his system, which is typical of a lot of Irish beef production system farms, 99% of the cattle here qualify for the Irish grass-fed standard.
Yes, exactly. There's exceptions built into the scheme. For example, the first 9 months of an animal's life is not considered in the scheme, which gives a great opportunity to grass-based dry stock herds to be able to qualify for the scheme, provided that we have data along the animal's life to prove that.
And from a beef farmer's point of view, what positives can you see where we're using the grass-fed standard?
So the standard was really developed in response to some market research carried out by Bord Bia that really emphasised to us that customers wanted grass-fed beef and also were willing to pay a premium for that beef. So really our focus at the moment is to engage with those customers and try and secure those markets so that that additional value can be relayed back to the rest of the supply chain. It is still early days in the scheme, so we're still trying to monitor how that premium can be delivered back to farmers as production starts to ramp up.
And how do farmers qualify? You mentioned standard, they don't have to apply for it, or?
Yeah, so there's a couple of two main things that farmers need to kind of consider when trying to become eligible for grass-fed. First of all, they must retain their quality assurance status of their farm, and they can do that by joining the Sustainable Beef and Lamb Assurance Scheme. And the second thing is when purchasing animals to make sure that you're checking the source of that animal to make sure that they're coming from a quality assured herd. So those 2 points are important because we need the data of the animal's life to be able to determine whether or not the animal is eligible for the grass-fed criteria. There are a couple of exceptions to this. So for example, the main exception is that the first 9 months of an animal's life is not considered in the grass-fed model. This is typically because the assumption that the calves are usually with their mothers in the fields on grass for that element of their lives. So the model does not consider that first 9 months. And it's that sort of flexibility in the model really improves the overall eligibility of animals, especially in dry stock herds like the one we're on here today. In those animals becoming qualified, and we'd expect on a farm like the Alan's farm here today that the vast majority of animals would qualify for grass-fed beef.
So potentially, Rory, can all beef animals qualify for the grass-fed Irish beef standard?
So currently the model includes cows, heifers, steers and young bulls.
Okay, so quite a range, yeah. So it's a great initiative there, because we're promoting grass, as we can see on Alan's farm here, the positives impact grass can have on the bottom line within the farm, and that great message is carried outside the farm and across to the marketplace as well. Exactly,
yeah. It's something that Bord Bia are very excited about, this grass-fed standard. We have a great story to tell here in Ireland around grass-fed systems, and I think we all knew that we were grass-fed, but now we have the data to back it up, and we have an accredited scheme to really show our customers that the beef that they're buying really is truly grass-fed.
Okay, that's great. Thanks a million, Rory.
Thank you very much.
So that brings an end to the Irish Grassland Association Virtual Beef Event 2021. On behalf of the IGA Council and the IGA Beef Committee, I want to say a massive thanks to both host farms, John Kingham in County Louth and Alan Callaghy, located on the Kildare-Meath border. I also want to thank Bord Bia's Rory Mannion for giving us that little bit more information on the grass-fed beef standard. As always, this event wouldn't be able to take place without the continued support of Mullinahone Co-op, so thanks very much for that. So over the last hour or so, we've got a good overview of both John and Alan's system. John's farm isn't typical of an Irish suckler farm, but it's great to see such large-scale suckler farming here in Ireland. Alan brought us back to basics and showed us the importance of good grassland management coupled with good grazing infrastructure, and how all of that has led to a 40% meal reduction usage on the farm. So some great progress has been made there. And while Alan showcased the importance or the potential of grass inside the farm gate, it was great to see the potential that Irish grass-fed beef has in our international markets. Finally, for those that have missed the event, it'll be available on the IGA social media channels and on the IGA website. Before we go, I just want to extend my thanks to the IGA Beef Committee and to Maura Callery for all our work over the last couple of days and weeks. But that's it for now. We'll see you all back on farm in 2022.